Hello everyone, welcome back. Today's story is from entitled people. Our first story, entitled Neighbor Wants Copy of Grandma's Will. When my grandmother was diagnosed with cancer, she opted for no treatment. She had watched her husband go through chemo, radiation, and surgery, and he was miserable the whole time. She didn't want that for herself. Her family supported her. Over the next year, she gifted items to family and friends, told us to write our names on the things we wanted, take what we wanted, etc. There were conditions. No, you can't have that. It's a family heirloom, meant to go to Aunt and her kids, or to Dad and his kids. We all knew what those items were, and who they were going to, so that was easily settled after she died. The house was inherited by my father, who very suddenly and unexpectedly passed away 2 weeks later. I inherited the house at that point. The next-door neighbor, we'll call him Todd, came over several times, upset that he and his kids, 21F, 19M, weren't invited to Grandma's funeral. There wasn't one. We were all too busy reeling from my father's death, weren't presented with a copy of the will. It only included family members, and he knew Grandma loved his kids like her own. She didn't. She complained about them coming over all the time, stealing her water to fill their pool, and she had to tell them to stop calling her Grandma. He wanted to know if I would allow his kids to go through the house to see if there was anything they'd like to take to remember her by. Okay, first, dude. My grandma died 4 weeks ago. And, dude, my dad died 2 weeks ago. I thought he was awfully rude, but I offered to let them go through the boxes I had packed, that I was planning to donate, and he was offended. I mean, mortified. He said his daughter and son had their hearts set on some items that were family heirlooms, and I literally laughed at him. I explained they were family heirlooms and would be staying with me, and 2 of the items had already gone home with my brother. He said, my kids were her family, and she would have gifted those to them. They should have been included, along with everyone else, when everything was divided up. Keep in mind that none of us knew this guy or his kids, other than the neighbors next door. They were never at any family gatherings that were held at her house, and the only time I ever heard her talk about them was when she was complaining about them. Especially when she caught them using both her hoses to fill up their pool. And then came over, complaining because she had put locks on the outdoor faucets. Luckily, Todd's house was in foreclosure, and he moved away about a year later. I have more stories, but those will come later. Edit, I did want to clear a few things up. This happened a little over 10 years ago. We were all prepared for Grandma's passing, and while we were sad, we were also. But my dad's passing was unexpected and absolutely devastating. He was my best friend, and I feel his loss almost daily. I am surprised at how much everyone's condolences mean to me, even after so many years. Thank you. Todd brought up the subject 3 times in the year he lived next door, all within about 2 weeks. This particular incident was the end of it. The first 2 times were eyebrow-raising hints, where I walked away not really sure if I was interpreting his words correctly. This time, he was brazenly clear, and when I laughed and told him he couldn't have the items he listed, he never brought it up again. Our next story, Mother asked when she's moving in with me and my partner in this rich country. This conversation popped up at the wake of my grandmother's funeral. She was holding her plate of food and sat down next to my aunt and me on a couch, very smug-looking, and kept smirking at people as if she's any better than them. Turned out she had it in her head somehow that she'd be moving to another country with me and my partner and our kids. Because Grandma had passed away, so she'd have no responsibility like that, and she's retired. So, she had gone around telling people how she'd be living a ravishing, retired lifestyle in a rich Scandinavian country for free, without having to raise any damn finger. She asked me loudly, so, when does my flight leave? I asked, what the hell did she mean by that? And she said loudly, so everyone could hear, you know, our flight back to your husband's country, so I can live luxuriously like you promised me? I promised her, F all, other than never gonna talk to her again after I flew back. So, me being me, and my incapability to sugarcoat anything, I blatantly told her that it had never happened because I'm not stupid enough to bring her dangerous ass around my children. The face crack of the century, let me tell you. My aunt, and the rest of the room, cackled. She then thought she heard it wrong, so I repeated again, you are not moving in with me, and you can erase that idea from your brain, because you're a dangerous, lazy, greedy person. I am not about to introduce that type of energy to my children. She then threw tantrums, yelling and shouting about how she's entitled to move in with me and be taken care of by the family. I argued back that unless she would be willing to find a place to stay over there herself, find a job, learn a new language, and actually work again, then she would not survive. Because I have kids to take care of, and I'm not about to be taking my energy and time off them to cater to her lazy ass. She then went silent on me and refused to talk to me for the rest of the evening. Fine by me? Fine by everyone else. They just had a good time giggling at how delusional she was. Edit: I did not expect this to blow up. The reason this took place at the most inappropriate time was because I was leaving pretty much the day after. I wasn't staying with her, hell no, so she had to talk to me right there and then. Was I already angry at her when she did it? Absolutely. The woman's mother just died, my grandmother just died, and she chose to speak happily, mind you, about how she's moving and leaving all of it behind, once and for all, so she can live luxuriously. Yes, she likes buying brand name stuff, by mooching off people? No, thank you. I cannot abide by that. Why is she dangerous? The woman would choose money over any family at any time. If it means she would be able to live a certain lifestyle, then she would choose money over protecting her family. I am not bringing that near my kids. I did not want to mention this, but she enabled the S's I had to endure as a kid, and more. As long as she was getting money, she was okay with what was happening. Next story. At my mother's funeral, I had 3 people I had never met in my entire life come up to me and told me that I now have to take care of my father. My father lives 2 hours away. Back then, he was in his 60s and still working, and I was also working full-time. And yes, in the beginning, he had assumed I would pop by every second weekend to make his laundry and clean the house. He found that reasonable. I came by exactly 2 weekends, my cooking was abysmal, and I didn't clean anything. I just came for company and showed him how to use the washing machine. He, fortunately, gave up after my godmother yelled at him, and he hired a cleaner. Another story, when my mother died, I realized how shielded from the real world my dad was. The day after she died, we went to get groceries. Holy moly effing jeez. That was almost more stressful than everything else going on. How much for a block of cheese? You're not spending all that money on bread, are you? Why are there TVs for sale in here? It took many months to help him integrate into the real world. Honestly, I had no idea how much my mother did for him, but I made it clear he'd have to learn for himself, because I was not going to be running around after him like some sort of housekeeper or assistant. My favorite was the money. We were getting petrol after the supermarket drama, and he revealed he had no money left. I said it was fine, he could just use his card to pay. Blank stare. Turned out, my mother gave him everything he needed in cash on Monday mornings, and he was expecting that to continue. I said, if you think I'm driving across the city to dispense money every Monday like a walking ATM, you're onto plums. I had to show him how to use an ATM. We had 2 practice sessions, which he actually picked up very easily. He was genuinely stunned he had done it the first time and turned to me and said, "My God. It's so easy." Took after 1.5 years to get his head around debit cards and paying bills online, of course, but he got there in the end with that too. Next story, entitled Woman Who Thought She Owned the Park, Justice Served. So, this happened a few months ago, and I still think about it. It was one of those rare moments when the universe actually balances out a situation perfectly. I live near a park where a lot of people from the neighborhood go to relax, walk their dogs, or just hang out. There's also this homeless guy, I'll call him Tim, who's been living near the park for a while. Tim's actually a pretty nice guy, he doesn't bother anyone, always picks up after himself, and even helps clean the park sometimes. He's got a little spot with a bench and some blankets, and that's where he stays. People in the community sometimes bring him food or coffee, and he never asks for anything. Well, one day, I was out walking my dog, and I saw this woman, classic Karen vibes, marching over to where Tim was sitting, minding his own business. She had one of those expensive yoga mats under her arm and a tiny dog on a leash. You could just tell she was looking for a reason to cause trouble. She stops in front of Tim and starts berating him about how he shouldn't be in her park, that he was ruining the view, and how he needed to get a job and stop being lazy. She was loud, rude, and drawing attention. But Tim just sat there, calmly explaining that he wasn't hurting anyone and had every right to be in the park like anyone else. She, of course, wasn't having it. She threatened to call the cops and have him removed for trespassing, even though it's a public park. A small crowd started forming because she was causing such a scene. A couple of us tried to step in, but she wasn't listening to anyone. She eventually pulled out her phone and called the cops, making it sound like Tim was some kind of dangerous vagrant harassing her, which was a total lie. Here's where it gets good. The cops arrive, and this woman puts on her best victim performance, saying how she feels threatened and unsafe with Tim around. Tim stays totally calm, and tells the cops exactly what happened, but it's clear the woman expects them to side with her. But the cops don't. Turns out, one of the officers knew Tim. The cop says, "Oh, hey Tim. How's it going?" They talk for a minute, and it's clear this officer knows Tim isn't some dangerous guy, just a homeless man down on his luck who's never caused trouble. The cop then turns to the woman and says, "Ma'am, this is a public park. Tim has every right to be here, just like you do." Her face completely changes. She starts sputtering, saying how it's unacceptable that people like him are allowed in places like this. She keeps pushing, asking if the officer can do something to remove him. The cop's response? "Ma'am, if you keep causing a disturbance, you will be the one removed from the park." Boom. You could hear a pin drop. The crowd was loving it at this point. The woman huffed and puffed, grabbed her dog, and stomped away, clearly embarrassed that her entitled attitude had backfired. After she left, some people in the park came over and gave Tim some food and drinks, just to show support. The cop hung out for a bit to make sure everything was okay and chatted with Tim like they were old friends. It was such a satisfying moment. Seeing this entitled woman get shut down and realizing that just because you're loud and obnoxious, doesn't mean you're in the right. Tim's still there at the park, and now it seems like people look out for him even more. Justice served. Our next story: tonight, I met my friend's new American girlfriend. And wow. Just wow. She is achingly beautiful, utterly stunning, in fact, but she's also the most entitled and idiotic person I have ever met. And I've met Boris Johnson. In the space of 3 hours, Scarlett O'Trailer Trash told me, she's part Welsh, as her family originally came from Edinburgh. It's racist of me to refer to my father as Spanish, and that Hispanic is the proper term, actually. He was literally born in Spain. That I would have to tone down my Welsh accent when she and my friend have children because it's just not refined. And I want my babies to be refined. They've been dating for about 6 weeks. And she's from bumfuck, Alabama, that she thought she may as well move to England since she was already paying for the England economy. That she could stay in the country indefinitely without a visa. I'm white. And I'm practically English. Why would they ask me to leave? That you just can't get good sushi anywhere outside of America. That snapping her fingers at the waitress was totally fine. That's why she's here. That I should stop looking for a lodger and let her move into my spare room for free, so we could bond. But you'll have to get rid of the plants, because I'm allergic to the carbon they put out. I must have said, that's not really true, about 30 times. Eventually, I decided to just roll with it and enjoy the entitled insanity. So, I started nodding agreement with everything she said and just let her talk. My friend was clearly dying inside. When I made my excuses to leave early, she said, "I was worried about meeting you because I know how much my friend respects you. I'm glad I made a good impression. Add me on Insta, and I'll show you how to decorate my room." 20 minutes later, I got a text from my friend, "I'm so sorry. I had no idea she was that dumb. Something tells me I won't have to see her again." Edit: Dear Americans, please stop apologizing. I promise I don't hold you responsible. Besides, I know what the world thinks about the UK. If you don't blame me for Brexit, Nigel Farage, and footy hooligans, I'll give you a free pass on the red hats and the bum F bimbos. Next story: friend wants to use me as her backup ATM. Next month, I am going away on vacation with a longtime friend, F. We are going to the Caribbean for 5 nights. It is not all inclusive, so we will be responsible for paying for food, drinks, and any activities. She asked me, how much was I bringing in cash? I said, $300 cash, plus debit and credit cards. She told me, I am going to bring $300 cash, but no debit or credit cards. She said, I am on a budget, and $300 is my limit. I explained, that comes around to only $60 per day. This is not one of the cheaper Caribbean islands, so food and drink alone won't leave you with much left over. I reminded her that she needs to factor in cabs, incidentals, or any activities we may decide to do. And you never know if an emergency will come up where she will need money. She says to me, "That is why I have you," and started to laugh. That pissed me off to no end. I tell her that we are both adults who are responsible for our own selves. It would be one thing if she lost her purse and needed money, I would float her money before she even had time to ask. But, to purposely use me as her backup ATM is not going to work. I told her, now that I know what she is up to, I'm not going to go along with it. If she runs out of money, she will just be asked out and hungry. She needs to bring her cards with her for her own good. She is now telling me I am too harsh and she will bring extra money, but no cards. I told her to do what she wants, but if there is an emergency, she is on her own. Update: Z is now going on a Christmas cruise with a group of her friends. Her cabin mate, the same one who told me that I was mean and stingy, just texted me about Z's plan to only bring cash, no credit/debit cards for their upcoming cruise. Since the cruise is all inclusive, including unlimited drinking packages, Z feels she can get away with it this time. The cabin mate wants to know what did I do to get Z to bring a credit card on my vacation with her. I never laughed so hard in my life. I haven't answered her yet. I want to respond, don't be so mean and stingy. Lol, but I'm electing to stay out of it. Just wanted to share that update. Edit 1, I gave in. I wrote her back, just cover for her. Don't be so mean and stingy. She responded, I deserve that. I'm sorry. Edit 2, cabin mate ended up putting her credit card down for Z's sale and sign card. The card you used to pay for stuff on the cruise. I heard she isn't a happy camper right now. I hope they can pull through and enjoy the cruise. That's it for now. See you in the next post.